This video is going to discuss a few more examples of figurative language and literary devices in literature. To review, figurative language is the way an author uses the English language to create depth, meaning, clarity, and enhancement in their work. A literary device is a technique a writer uses to produce a special effect in their writing. Today we will have examples of both literary devices and figurative language. The first literary device we're going to discuss today is symbolism. Symbolism is when an object represents another to give it an entirely different meaning that is much deeper and more significant. It doesn't have to always be an object either. It can be an action, an event, or a word spoken by someone, and that may also have symbolic value. Literature always has symbolism. Symbols have a deeper meaning in each piece. There are some very common examples of symbolism. A dove is a symbol of peace. A red rose, or the red color, might stand for love or romance. Black may be a symbol of darkness. A boat may be a symbol of freedom. A broken mirror may be a symbol of bad luck or reflection, or something like that. Symbolism can occur in any piece of literature, and it offers the reader a chance to understand what the author is trying to say more deeply. The next literary device we're going to talk about is called allusion. Allusion is a brief and indirect reference to a person, place, thing, or idea that has either historical, cultural, literary, or political significance. It does not describe in detail the person or thing to which it refers. Allusion can be really tricky because allusion is very cultural in context, and so often we may not pick up allusions because they're really specific to the culture of the person who is writing. Allusion often refers to mythological or cultural figures that would be widely known within that culture. The context may be hard to spot without background knowledge. Some examples of allusion that may be very common or popular are referring to someone like Romeo from Shakespeare's famous play Romeo and Juliet. If I say to you, don't act like a Romeo in front of her, what I'm doing is alluding to that character of Romeo who is very romantic and trying really hard to win the favor of his beloved Juliet. As I said, allusion can also be very mythological and cultural and even religious and spiritual in nature. If I read in a book, this place is like the Garden of Eden. It is perfect and beautiful and flawless. This is a biblical allusion to the garden that God created in the beginning of the world according to the book of Genesis in Christian belief. I may also say to you something like, hey, you're such an Einstein. Or if you read in the book somebody's dialogue saying, ooh, guess who the new Einstein of our school is? It's referring to Albert Einstein, who is a famous scientist who changed science forever. Those kinds of allusions are fairly easy to pick out if you know the background and the context. Some allusions may be a lot more difficult to find, and so it's very important that you look into the cultural significance and background of the writer. Now we'll switch gears and talk about 3 more types of figurative language. They are repetition, alliteration, and onomatopoeia. Repetition is probably the most simple one to understand. Repetition is the repeating of phrases or words in order to add emphasis to the ideas that they are trying to convey. An example is perhaps a poem that starts every line with the words, because I do not hope. Because I do not hope to turn again. Because I do not hope. Because I do not hope to turn again. And the repetition of the phrase, because I do not hope, really tries to emphasize the underlying meaning of the poem and give it a lot of depth. When words and phrases are repeated in literature, Whether it is a novel, a short story, or a poem, it means that that phrase, idea, or word is very important to the author and should be given special importance to the reader as well. The next one is alliteration. Alliteration is also a kind of repetition, but it is referring to the repetition of sounds. Alliteration is the repetition of the first consonant sound in multiple words in text that is close together. Alliteration can be used in poetry, short stories, or any other kind of fiction as well. More often, you'll probably see it in poetry. An example for you of alliteration is, Sally slipped and slid down the slushy, snowy sidewalk. Alliteration really changes the way we hear the words read out loud. The alliteration in the example I just said was of the letter S, repeated over and over again. The last kind of figurative language we will discuss today is called onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is using different kinds of words to mimic sounds that we would hear. Some examples of onomatopoeia are words that help us to understand machine noises, like honk, beep, vroom, clang, zap, boing. It could also be animal names or animal sounds, cuckoo, chickadee, whooping crane. The word whoop is onomatopoeia. It could be sounds of impact, and these ones might be the most common: boom, crash, bang, whack, thump. It may also be sounds that the voice could make, like shush, giggle, growl, whine, murmur, blurt, whisper, hiss. And lastly, they could also be nature sounds like splash, drip, spray, whoosh, buzz, and rustle. These are not the only words that mimic sounds or categories of words, but they are some that you will be able to hear. What onomatopoeia does is it helps the reader to hear what the writer is trying to portray. So onomatopoeia really helps to develop sensory language and appeal to the sense of sound. That's everything for this video today. Please make sure that you have a good understanding of symbolism, allusion, repetition, alliteration, and onomatopoeia.